Why do you think Alexander McQueen is still relevant today?
I think he's relevant because he was groundbreaking. He was, brazen, young, he was fresh, and everything he did was shocking or modern or new, but it was exciting. And I think that's what we miss today, that's what we miss now. The Annabelle Neilson collection of Alexander McQueen takes place at Kerry Taylor auctions on the 22nd of September.
Annabelle Neilson, who was the model and socialite, died in 2018 after suffering from a heart attack. What is it about this collection that makes it so important?
Obviously anyone can just go and buy an Alexander McQueen dress and buy lots of them, and it's a collection. But what makes this important is that these were personal gifts from Lee Alexander McQueen to his best friend, basically. They were first introduced by their mutual friend Isabella Blow in 1993. Annabelle was very, very pretty, very small, and very naughty.
How was Annabelle involved in the design process?
So he'd go round to her house, or she'd go round to his. She had a room in every house he owned. And he would just stand her up and play with her. He'd just get some fabric and start pinning it and cutting it and coming up with ideas.
So the auction basically runs chronologically, starting with Highland Rape, which was autumn-winter 95-96. What do you have from this collection?
The earliest piece is a very skimpy little lilac top that looks as though it's been shot through with blunderbuss. It's just covered in holes. But they are intentional, each edge is hand-stitched. And it was worn on the catwalk with a pair of tiny knickers which had been decorated with stubbed out cigarette ends. That was again a very raw, controversial collection. There was a lot of consternation and anger in the press at the time because journalists felt that McQueen was degrading women. He was good at press, and I think, like Galliano, he also realised that you can't just have a tame little catwalk with girls walking up and down. It's just too boring for words. And he became internationally known after that collection. He was the bad boy.
And in 1996, McQueen started at Givenchy. How do you think that affected his work?
McQueen, for the first time when he joined Givenchy, instead of just having a row of machinists, including himself sometimes, he now had this couture atelier for them, and he was able to really realise the dreams and ideas that he had properly for the first time. We have this beautiful bias cut lace dress, pale green, and it was the only piece that Lee kept from his tenure at Givenchy.
Oh really? Why do you think just this one?
It's hard to say. I think he probably kept this dress because it's just so masterful in terms of construction, and I think he would be very proud to have made something that wouldn't have looked out of place in the 1930s. The level of craftsmanship is so high. When Annabelle got divorced, he dedicated the Joan collection to her. And this whole show was built around the idea of, strong women struggling against hardships and coming out triumphant in the end. It's dark. It has lots of sort of blood reds, blacks, greys. And in this collection, Annabelle has this wonderful sequin top, which is printed with the murdered daughters of the Romanov Tsar, who were killed during the revolution.
Could you explain the story behind the Saraband collection?
Saraband was this outrageous Spanish dance that began in the Spanish colonies in the Americas in the 1500s and was banned because it was so rowdy and naughty, and people were being licentious on the dance floor, basically. It was like the punk rock of its time, if you like, in 16th century Europe. And then later on it became, this dance was adopted by the English and the French courts. It became very stately, and Handel wrote a saraband, which was played at the show. The key saraband piece we have in the auction is this black lace dress, which is it's 100% Spanish. It has these massive padded hips, which are sort of Infanta inspired. It's of the scalloped black lace, which has this graduated hem, just like a flamenco dress. He was very good at connecting with people and making friends with talented people. And Annabelle's talent was writing. And so Lee harnessed that talent from her. And in his country cottage, he had this ancient old gnarled mulberry tree. And he asked Annabelle to write him a fairy story involving the tree. It's an unpublished story, and so I'm one of the few people who's ever read it. Lee obviously read it, I've read it, her family have read it. And so she came up with the idea of this girl who lives inside the tree. She grows up, becomes this beautiful woman, she emerges from the tree and goes into the outside world. And it's like a sort of gothic horror story where she goes through a giant's garden, into a marble palace, where she's pursued by a prince who's going to do all kinds of terrible things to her, and she tries to get back to the tree and back to the mother tree and wants to get back in. She describes the colours are black and white and red, and these are the palette colours that he uses for this show. And on the front of some of the dresses, again, there are printed graphics of this gnarled old tree and this little child looking up at it.
Some of the pieces fetching the highest estimate prices come from Plato's Atlantis. What do you think it is about this collection that secured its place in fashion history?
It was a real fashion moment. I think this is one of the most joyous collections that he ever made. He was very happy when he designed this collection. He'd been on holiday with Annabelle, and they'd done a lot of snorkeling and diving. And he and she were imagining this world under the sea. And if you have watched that show, you'll see these strange sea creatures almost, the most incredible hair and makeup. We also have some of the shoes. We've got a pair of Shipwreck Boots, which are these sort of verdigris leather booties with metal rivets and struts that form the platform and the heel. Those are incredibly rare. I've never seen another pair.
And on the 11th of February 2010, Lee McQueen committed suicide. But he had designed one more collection before that. Could you tell me a bit about Angels and Demons?
So this was a collection that he designed but he never saw made. Sarah Burton took over the production. She saw those designs of his come to life. She made that happen, and then she became the creative director immediately after that. We have one of the, I suppose, most poignant pieces is the Angels and Demons dress, which is woven with Hieronymus Bosch imagery and has sort of lavish gold embroidery, and she wore that to his memorial service, which she organised.
You've said some of the Sarah Burton pieces are much more wearable. Is that the direction that you think she took the brand in?
I think she has to, really. They're great catwalk show looks, but she'll always make sure that there's a great diffusion line that is wearable.
Who do you think are going to be the main players bidding for these designs?
It's going to be difficult to say. Normally, I would say we would have all the museums, but a lot of those are unfortunately closed at the moment. I hope the great things find their way into museums and collections, and I hope that the party will continue for the rest.